is Romy Black. I thought I'd invite you into the studio today here at Solux Studios just to go through a remix which is dropped today. This remix is called Your Love, and it's for BoogieKnights, and it's released on High Tech Records. Hey. So yeah, I just wanted to take you through a little bit of my process. You'll be able to hear it. I'm going to start developing my content a bit better, so this is kind of the atmosphere. It's a little bit sort of toned down in here. It's not as bright and blah 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 for like good video camera footage and stuff like that, but we'll work on that. And as well audio, so I'm looking at fixing that up as well, but you can hear what I'm doing. Anyway guys, I just want to give you a bit of an insight into how I put a remix together. So Mitch Medcalf is half of BoogieKnights with Anthony Shepard, sent me a track and asked me to remix it, and it's got a really strong vocal. It's been used, vocal's been used on a couple other things. It's out of a pack, so it's out there and ready for use, and the boys did a great rendition of it. They hit me up for a jacking version, and I put one together. So I just want to take you guys through the layers and show you kind of how I build a track, and then I don't know, I don't really have a problem with sharing secrets as such. There's a few things that I do that the people probably don't necessarily understand fully or have access to, so I don't know, I'm not really all about being a secret squirrel. I'm happy to share stuff with you guys, and if you have any questions you can ask me. I think I'll probably upload this on YouTube so we can have a bit of backwards and forwards there if you've got any questions. First of all, so this is the remix. So not like out and out jacking. It's probably a little bit more funkier than sometimes what I normally write, but it just felt right. It has a lot to do with some of the samples that I've used. So kick. Wait, let me just load it up all up here on the break. We'll zoom in here. Right, kick. So for me, jacking with kicks, I don't like big boomy kicks. I tend to cut it all at like 30 hertz. It's a little bit different than like tech house, and I'll lower it right down. So if you ever look at an EQ and you see that kick like punching, I like it to be punchy, but I don't want a really big boomy kick. I think it really muddies the waters, and big sound systems can do all that stuff for you with a nice sharp kick. So my preference. So this is the kick, non-loops, this is standard kick. This is loop. I don't always use loops. I like to program my drums from scratch, but every now and then I do find something I like, and this is one of them. Clap, sorry. It's a nice clean clap. Now further along down here, if you have a look, you can probably see it on the screen. Every 32, I pretty much make a massive change. Every 16, I make a minor change, and that's just to keep things interesting. When I say massive change, I mean like it's either a drop or something is removed or something comes back. And the reason I do that is to keep things interesting. It's a formula that works for me at the moment. I might change it up a little bit. Songs normally go for 6.5 minutes that I'm releasing at the moment, so there's enough there for 2 builds or 3 builds if I choose. I can go big, I can go small. It works well for me, but it's also a very quick and good way for me to arrange music. So out of this 32 bars, the 16 bars here have a shaker. I've panned, you probably can't hear that either, but I've panned my shaker so it goes backwards and forwards. Again, keep things interesting. Now, this is one of the loops that came in the pack from the BoogieKnights boys, so I've used that to kind of keep the original type. Now, my secret spice. So anyone who listens to my music probably knows that jacking has a very big sample sort of ethic. One thing I pride myself in finding samples that people don't know and don't use, and then manipulating them enough so that they're definitely not just like a run-of-the-mill sample pattern. Not that there's anything wrong with it, produce how you want to produce. A run-of-the-mill sample, something that no one's heard. I do use a lot of filtering. Probably the first real sort of style of house that I was buying records of was French house and filtered house, and that was the stuff that I was playing back in the day. So just like really cool filtered samples, great bass lines. I guess a real famous version of that would be Intro by Alan Brax, etc., and Fred Folk. There's a whole bunch of that stuff. But so this was the main sample that I lifted and filtered and changed up. It's got a very obvious LFO filter that comes in, I think, every third. So I use an Akai MFC 42. So this is like it's an analog filter. It's outboard gear, so it sends sound out, and then I twiddle these knobs, and they come back. I use Ableton. The filters inside Ableton are quite good, but look, there's a lot of arguments about analog versus digital and blah blah blah. But I actually also one of the reasons I like using outboard gear is it forces you to commit. So just using automation in Ableton is great, and it sounds good, and you have the ability to go back. But if you're committed to your in my case filtering, once I bounce it out and I twist knobs and send it back, it's locked down. I can't go back and change it. So it's kind of pushes you to be focused and not be so lazy. So that's the main sample. For my bass, I pretty much, guys, I think I've said it a couple of times, a couple of interviews and things like that. I pretty much use the same kick drum and the same bass preset for everything I do. Again, I don't think it sound like a broken record, but I think it's good to give yourself limitations if you're trying to find your sound. If you're out there just pulling stuff off Splice and buying sample packs and all this sort of stuff, I think that there's just too much for you to choose from, and you're never actually going to find your actual sound just because you're constantly, picking from everything. One of the things I think that artists and bands had a limitation to, like in a band, like I said before, again, if you've got to sing a certain sounds a certain way, or a bass player who plays his bass and guitars, etc., they're limited, and that's why that band sounds like it does. A lot of producers, I'm not saying you have to write the same thing over and over again, and that your style will come out. I'm pretty sure I could change my bass preset, and you probably still know it was me, but what I'll do is I'll just EQ it differently. So for my bass preset, I actually use 2 layered basses. I use this is a Korg M1, which is a very sort of famous 90s synthesizer by Korg, and I use the pick bass and take all the effects off it, so the old school sort of jacket feel, and then I use a sub bass, which you might not be able to hear. So what I'll tend to do is put that behind the other bass. It's all mono, so there's no clash, and then just EQ it accordingly, and the bass together sounds like this. Okay, now the vocals. That's the bass. The vocals. My love is never ending. So yeah, we chopped it up, done that. Now I do use effects in my music just to give, again, so every 32 there might be a crash or some effects. One thing that I like to do that I hear a lot of people not doing, and it's up to you what you do, is effects to me should enhance the main song. It shouldn't be like a major part of the song. So I hear a lot of effects in demos and things that I receive, and like, the whooshes and the rushes are really, they're really loud. And I think that, if you're building your song up with layers and cutting frequencies out, and I can talk to that in a second, you don't need to put all these sort of like sound effects so loud. They should be used to enhance movement and dynamic within the song, as opposed to, again, my opinion, to like just out and out. The louder that you put a build noise, like a whoosh up or something like that, some white noise or a rush, doesn't necessarily mean that the drop's going to work as well. as opposed to, say, taking away some bass frequencies and then dropping them at the drop. So here's some white noise from me. That's not white noise from me. Here's some white noise from me. So I don't know if you can hear that, but there's also side chain. So one of the things that, you know, especially in filtered house and French house, that's and most house, is side chaining. But side chaining on the main sample is a big thing in French and filtered house and jacking house. They all seem to have that same sort of ethos and that technique. I used to create sidechain compression with a compressor and send a kick drum in, which is the signal that I'd use to push it. But there's a lot of, I mean, you have a lot more control, but there's also a few issues with that. What I use now, and I'm pretty sure most people have cottoned onto it, maybe you haven't, again, secret not secret, is Nicky Romero's Kickstart. So I don't know if you can see that there, probably not. I can turn this. So what this does is basically what's called a automatic ducker. I set it on the sub setting and then put it pretty much on everything. So obviously not the kick because that's driving force. Sometimes I put it on a clap, just a tad, just to almost glue it in, almost using it like a compressor. It is a compression of some sort. But by putting it on most of my channels, depending in varying levels, what it does is it pulls everything together, if that makes sense. Sometimes when you're using samples, they can be a little bit unruly, I'll leave it that way. And sometimes things can be just sound out of sync. There's been times where I've put this ducker on it and it's just pulled everything in place. The white noise you heard has that on it. Here, I'll find the actual one. Yeah. So this is the actual ducker. You'll see the white noise coming in here as it comes in over there. You can see that. So you can hear that ducking. Again, it just makes for a whole bunch of tidiness that I like. And I do have crushes. So I would call this sort of stuff punctuation. I think it just makes stuff sound polished. You don't have to do it. I know guys out there who like to produce dry. There is nothing wrong with that. But for me, again, as long as it's not over the top. Again, that's got some ping pong delay. I think it sounds good to have it in there as long as it's not too obvious. Now, I do like a build for some stuff. This does have a build in it. It's got a snare build, as I recall. We've got some other effects going on in here. Here, this is the sort of rushing effect I was talking about before. So that's going on in the background. But like I said, it's to create sort of tension, and obviously it sounds quite loud there because you can hear it, but I like to peel that back a bit. So I know this is a little bit in-depth, but without going too in-depth, I'll probably organise some screen capture and stuff, so the next time we do this you can hear it. Anyway, so you've heard all that. So what did it sound like at the very end? This is it. So this is the Your Love, My Love BoogieKnights Romy Black remix out on High Tech Records. Here you can have a listen with everything going. I just make sure everything's going. There we go. thanks for watching. I'll try and provide some more decent content. Yeah, if you like this stuff, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.